All right. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Welcome, everybody, to the 66th episode of the Hashtag Investors Podcast. I am your host, Scott Bauer. Today, we got Greg Dickerson with us. A little bit about Greg. He is a serial entrepreneur, real estate developer, coach, mentor, and over the past 20 years, he has bought, developed, and sold over $200 million in real estate, built and renovated hundreds of custom homes and commercial buildings, as well as starting 12 different companies from the ground up. He's an expert on the topics of real estate investing, real estate development, entrepreneurship. He's spoken at industry conferences and mastermind events across the country and been a guest commentator on Fox Business with Neil Cavuto, I think is how you say his name, and the Dave Ramsey Show, and is regularly interviewed on some of the top real estate investing and business podcasts today, such as this one, the Investors Podcast.
That's right.
Greg served in the U.S. Navy right out of high school and has always been a leader in the community, serving on the boards of several churches, ministries, and nonprofit organizations. He is a current coach with some of the top real estate investors, syndicators, and developers in the industry today. So, Greg, that's a lot to lead you up, but welcome to the show.
Yeah, Scott, thank you for having me. And I love it. Episode 66, right? So get your kicks on episode 66.
That's it, man. That's absolutely it. Why don't you give the listeners a little bit more about your background to kind of go off of what I've already said and what you're focused on now? Let's talk.
So you just described adult ADD, right? That's one of the best ways to describe it. So no, I am. So yeah, so just like it said, I joined the Navy right out of high school, did not go to college, and I built a construction company from the ground up in 1997, 98 when I got started. My first year I did $250,000 in sales, just me, myself, and my truck and tools, and built that into a $30 million building company in 7 years, and then started a dozen other companies along the way, all construction and real estate related, including a real estate brokerage and real estate investing development company. I had the building company, I had some other ancillary service companies along the way. And so currently I still flip houses. I build new construction spec houses. I develop property, commercial, residential, multifamily, mixed-use developments. I love heavy value-add, heavy lift type projects and adaptive reuse. And so those are the types of things I'm focused on. And at my point in my career, everything is outsourced and leveraged. So I work out of my house. I'm in the field. This is my mobile office. So I drive around looking for deals, checking on projects. And if there's a podcast or administrative work that needs to be done, I just pull out my laptop, knock it out. So that's kind of my days.
You know, I think it's really important you touch on a couple of things. One is that you're always out in the field. You're always looking for deals. You're always out doing things. You're out being active in the marketplace, trying to find opportunities, right? Yeah. That's kind of the first part of success is to show up. You got to show up before you can really get anything done, right? So that's huge. How did you get started, right out of when you were in the Navy and then you got out of that? Why was real estate what you decided to go in?
It was an accident. So I was actually, like I said, I started in construction. I didn't really know anything about real estate. I'd owned houses, early, when I got married in 1990, we bought our first house right away. So only thing I knew about real estate was just buying a house you live in. And there wasn't a lot of information back in that time frame. Maybe Carlton Sheets was out there. A guy named Russ Whitney was out there, and I read a little bit of their stuff, but never really thought about doing it as a business or a career. Didn't want to be a real estate agent. Back then it was a whole lot different than it is now. And so I started out just by default in the building industry. So I moved to the Outer Banks of North Carolina, a little summer resort area off the coast of North Carolina in 1997. And I moved there to open a restaurant. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to open a chain of restaurants down there. And I worked in the restaurant industry the first year down there. And that was no fun. Didn't like it. And decided, I'd bought a house and I was trying to get an addition built on the house and I couldn't get anybody to call me back. So I started talking to my neighbors and friends and they were like, oh yeah, everybody's so busy. You can't even get anybody to do anything. Well, I had some construction skills and I'd always had a little construction side business while I was working in restaurants, and I was a manager in restaurants. So I had some experience. I knew how to hire people, train, manage. And, I was a district manager at one point before I moved there with a chain of restaurants. So I said, well, shoot, where there's a problem, there's an opportunity. So I decided to create a little remodeling company. And, my tagline when I started out was, we will call you back. That alone, it just got me a ton of business. And I'm a marketing expert. And, back then it was all grassroots, offline marketing channels. And I put the company out there. I found a name that nobody else had that made me look like I was there in business for a long time. Called it Outer Banks Construction. It was the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So it appeared that I'd been there a long time. And I took out full-page ads in the newspapers. I took out big full-page ads in the phone books for the services I was providing. And I had signs and trucks everywhere. So it looked like instantly overnight we were this huge company that had been there forever. So that's kind of how I blew it up and grew it. I started with nothing. I started with a little credit line on my house and credit cards, and borrowed money to buy vehicles and finance my business that way from the ground up the hard way.
And that's another great point. Well, a couple of good points there. One, you're a marketing expert. I mean, you went from nobody to appearing to be a massive influencer, a massive company that has been there for a long time. That's super important for the listeners out there, because people that are listening to this podcast that maybe are trying to get started and are afraid to spend a dollar or spend money on marketing themselves or getting themselves out there so that people actually know what you're doing is an important piece that goes into it, right? You have to market yourself. You have to get yourself out there, and that's the first start of all of it. So you
got to build a brand, first and foremost, that's recognizable, easily recognizable. If you're going to use signs, you got to think about who's going to see that sign. Like if it's on a road or in front of a house, if somebody's going by at 25 to 45 miles an hour, they got to be able to easily read that sign very clearly. So it's all about brand, and it's all about promoting that brand and getting yourself in front of people. And, that's really what it's about, is being in front of people, staying in front of people, educating people, putting your brand out there and making it top of mind for everybody who's looking for your service.
Right. Now, I mean, you started off and just starting with houses, but
right
at the beginning of the call here, we talked about all the other things that you're doing with development, multifamily, commercial, single family, all of the above. Walk us through the progression of how that worked, because you don't go from buying a single family house to buying $100 million apartment complex. There is a gradual progression.
Right.
How did that look for you?
Yeah, I started small. So I started small, working with and learning from other investor developers. As a remodeling general contractor, they were hiring me to do their projects, and started out remodeling some houses for a couple of investors that were, flipping them. And then I said, hey, I'd like to do that. And they said, well, find a deal and, we'll do a deal with you. So I got into flipping houses that way. And then I partnered with a developer friend of mine to start building spec houses. And he taught me how to do the spec house development game. And then I parlayed that into my model as a builder was I would take a position in land, I would tie up lots and developments, and then I would flip them to my clients and build them a house. And then I started developing the land and flipping to the clients and other builders and building houses. And then I started building commercial buildings. A lot of them were for some of the businesses I was doing. I would build the building for the business, or it could have been for somebody else. So I kind of learned by doing with others. I educated myself along the way. That's the biggest thing. I did not go to college, but I am very self-educated, constantly pouring into myself, constantly learning things. Back then we didn't have the internet. We didn't have mentors and coaches. It just wasn't a thing. So you had to learn by doing, and I learned it all the hard way by doing with others. And, some people took advantage of me. And I had a partner that taught me how to build spec houses when I first started out. And, he took advantage of me, but I learned. And I learned through that series of 4 or 5 houses we built together. I made money, but I definitely didn't make what I should have. And I learned, and just built from there. And just I'm not afraid. I'm a big thinker. I'm not afraid to take on deals and do bigger deals, and then ask for help and bring others in and grow that way. So that's kind of how I did it. Along the way, just one thing to the next.
And so you've leveraged your network. You leveraged the people that you were around you at the very beginning to be able to build up your business. And in that time frame, you had to give up some capital, some of the money you had to give that up. But that was really your education, right? So the listeners out there that are thinking about, maybe they're afraid to partner up with somebody, or a potential partner comes in, they want half of the business, but they have all of the knowledge and experience, or half of whatever deal you're working on. That's not something to be afraid of, right? I mean, I think that it's very important for people to utilize that. I know I did. When I first got started, I worked for a guy, I did all the work, he made all the money, but I learned a ton. That's right. What you have to do.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people to do. If you want to learn how to get started investing in real estate, you have 3 ways. 1, you can hire a coach to teach you. 2, you can invest passively. Or 3, you can go to work for somebody and learn from them and or partner. So that's really the easiest way to get started. And, that's what I did. But the biggest thing was I know and I knew what I didn't know. So I knew that I didn't know, and I would reach out and ask for help. And I wasn't afraid or ashamed to say, hey, I'm young. I want to learn. I'm a seeker of wisdom. I've never done this before. Will you partner with me and help me through it? I'll do whatever it takes. I'll bring capital. I'll do the work. You just tell me what to do and how to do it. So that's how I learned. I brought capital. I found the deals, brought capital, and did the work. And then I would partner with sophisticated developers that would teach me the rest of the way through it. Sometimes they would bring capital, things like that. But more importantly, I said, look, I've got everything. I need intellectual capital. I need your experience. I'll do everything else. So I was very fortunate that I had a building company that provided cash flow so that I could find the deal, bring the capital, and then invite somebody in, give them a piece of the deal just to teach me. Sometimes today you don't have to do that. Finding a good deal is enough, but I wanted to make it a no-brainer, and that's how I learned. I said, look, I'm young, I'm hungry, I don't know what I don't know. Teach me what you know, and this is how we're going to do it.
What are some of the biggest problems that you've had in your progression up to this point? And I'll ask you that question to start, and I'll segue into another question on that.
So the biggest problem I've had along the way, is that what you said?
Yep.
The fact that I didn't know what I didn't know. So where I was limited in terms of the types of opportunities. We didn't have big multifamily properties. We didn't have big commercial properties. It was a resort rental beach town. We didn't have a lot of hotels. So basically I was limited to what I knew in that area, which was building beach houses. It was still very good, and I built a nice, company for that area. I was one of the largest builder developers there. And then I learned the other things and started branching out into other areas off of the coast into the mainland areas. But probably the hardest thing for me getting started, being young, and back in the day when I started, it wasn't so easy to borrow money.
How old were you, by the way? How old were you?
I was 29, probably 30,
Yep.
And I had some corporate jobs and things, but I didn't have any business experience. So I could not borrow from lenders out of the gate. So I had to build my company up, build my credit up to where I could borrow from banks. So I had to finance expensively on credit cards. And, back then equity lines were not cheap. Interest rates weren't cheap for construction loans. So, it was a little bit harder to get money back then. It wasn't as easy to raise private investor capital like you can do now. And it wasn't a thing, right? Nobody was teaching that. So I didn't even know I could do that. And, so it was just a little slower progression and just took a little longer than it could take today with the way things are, knowing what I know, all the information that's out there. You could definitely scale and grow and scale a lot faster now than you could back when I was coming up.
Where are you targeted at right now? So, like we had mentioned at the beginning of the call, you've done a lot, you're doing a lot in all the different aspects of real estate, but where is your main focus? Because I know one big thing about very successful entrepreneurs that I've met is they're very targeted and they're very focused on what they're doing, right? I know I struggle with that from time to time, as there's a lot of shiny objects out there that look very, very bright, but sometimes you have to stay in your own lane, do what you know how to do, and you'll see success that way. So how do you stay focused, and what is that focus?
Yeah, I'm just a focused person and very disciplined. And, when I was younger, I was doing a lot more different things and a lot of smaller things. Now I focus on fewer, bigger deals. And so I can do more of them. I'm outsourced, turnkey. So I operate from the, North Carolina up into the Northern Virginia area. That's kind of my primary region. And then I've got, partners and associates down in, the southern region, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, those areas. So I'll get involved in some bigger deals. I'll bring in intellectual capital to the table, kind of like I was looking for when I was younger. I come into deals with people outside of my areas, and I offer the expertise and partner with them in deals, or I'll do fee development where they can hire me as a consultant to come in and help them do a project. And then I do the coaching and mentorship as well. But what I focus on is fewer, bigger deals. Everything's outsourced. I hire general contractors, turnkey, to do all my work for me. I'm a leader, delegator, motivator. That's what I've been very fortunate. I'm just wired that way. I love to delegate. I have no problem letting go of control. That's how I built and scaled companies so fast. And that's why I'm able to do so many different things, because it's all outsourced. It's all done through other people. All the businesses that I started, I didn't start them myself. I didn't do the work. I always had an operator that I coached and led them and delegated to them and taught them how to do it and how to build the business. And I did it through them. So that's kind of what I do now. So all the projects I have going on, I have teams in those areas between the realtors, the builders, the architects, engineers, and even other developers that are actually doing the day-to-day. I just show up, kind of check them out, coach them, and stay in touch with them on a daily basis. So for me, it's easy. It's just how I'm wired. I stay very focused, very disciplined. What I tell most other people is, if you've got something that's working for you right now, let's focus on that and scale that and build that out, get it to where you can get it, put it on autopilot, then go do something else. But before you go do something else, get that thing that you have, whether you're a wholesaler, a fix and flipper, apartment person, you can automate that. You can scale it and automate it. You're going to reach critical mass at some point, but you can get that organization growing, find somebody to run it for you, coach them, and then utilize the cash flow from that to invest in bigger deals and do different things. So that's what I did. I had my building company. I grew and scaled that, put it on autopilot to where it was maxed out, and then I was able to do all these other things.
So kind of a segue into that, or a couple of questions. How large is your operation, the Greg Dickerson operation that you have? What does that look like exactly? And, how many people are in that? I know you have a lot of subs and people that you're outsourcing to, but is there a core group of people that are in your business that are employees for your company, or is it all outsourced? I know in today's world, you could do that.
Yeah, it's all outsourced. So I've kind of scaled back. I used to have about 20 people at any given time that would work for me full time, and I've kind of scaled that back. So everything is outsourced. I've got administrative help that's outsourced. All of my builders, like I said, it's turnkey, so they have their staff, and I do deals with them and other developers and people that I work with. So my organization is very lean. It's just me, and I've got some outsourced administrative assistants whenever I need that, but again, I delegate through others. So the administrative load on me is very minimal. I'm coming in on the intellectual capital side, arranging things like, and then I have other partners that I partner with in other deals, and then they have their teams and their staff. So that's kind of how I operate now. I've really consolidated my life and consolidated things. And really, as of about a year and a half ago, is when I've kind of transition my business into a completely virtual outsourced business. But again, I do bigger deals. Like I've got a hotel development I'm working on. It's a $30 million project, right? 26.5 million. I don't need a staff. I've got a general contractor that's huge. That's all they do. They do $100 million worth of construction. I've got an engineering firm that they have a staff. They've got 20, 30 people. I've got architects. They have a staff. So I put together I found the land, put together the opportunity, worked with the hotel flag, identified for that property. I've got a third-party management company. So, I'm on the road using this, delegating and leading those teams that all have huge infrastructure, huge employees, or major companies. So I can do $100 million worth of projects this year, just me, because that's the way I'm structured. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. I don't need this huge team. I don't want a big animal at this point. I just want to kind of do these projects and just kind of coast, because I do a lot of stuff in the community as well. And, I don't want to be tied down to where I can't do the things that I want to do when I want to do them. So that's kind of how I'm wired. But yeah, we'll probably do about $100 million worth of projects this year, and just me. And if there's anything that I need administratively taken off of me, like the bookkeeping, the accounting, things like that, I've got accountants, attorneys, bookkeepers. Again, They have their staff, and I just delegate it to them and let them do it. So I'm just, very efficient. I take care of everything right now. I have no backlog in my life. If something comes into my inbox, it's taken care of. It's either responded to, deleted, filed, whatever. And, I just move it on from there. So, I'm very simple in what I do. And again, it's fewer, bigger projects. So it's easier to manage.
What specific assets are you doing these big projects in? Is it apartments? Is it hotels? You said you got this $100 million hotel development, or whatever size it was. I mean, what do you think is the best asset class that you're in right now?
Hotels are probably the most profitable, as a asset class, but it's a different animal. It's a retail business, within a real estate asset. They're really profitable. The ground up development, it's hot right now. Construction costs are going through the roof, so it's getting more difficult to do those projects. I had several of them that we had to actually table because the construction costs are just coming in too high right now. Yeah. Apartments, I like ground up apartments. Those are good. Everybody's chasing the value add play, so it's getting more difficult. Those prices are escalating. You got to be real careful on those, because that 3 to 5 year plan, we just don't know where interest rates are going to be. We don't know where rents are going to be, and we don't know if you're going to be able to refi or sell that asset in 3 to 5 years. So anybody doing that, you definitely want to have a longer term outlook and give yourself at least 10 years if you have to on those assets. But a lot of competition for multifamily. It's the safest, most consistent asset class, I think, over the long term, if you look back and look forward. So I feel good about that if you can find the right deal. Office can be difficult and tricky, but if you have the right office, the right kind, like medical office, legal, destination services that the professionals have to have an office for people to go to, those are good assets to own. And retail strip centers are really great assets right now. I think, the power center, shopping malls, some of those are doing well, but there's a lot of stress on retail right now. But the suburban neighborhood strip centers where you have your core services, coffee shops, dry cleaners, Starbucks, sandwich shops, things like that, where people need those services and they're going to go. I think those are great long-term assets to hold and to own. And those are good ones to develop too. They're quick, they're easy, they don't require a lot of money, but you can make a lot of money on them.
And you can do triple net leases with those people, right? I mean, you can do a lot of different that I would agree with that. I own no shopping centers at this point, something I've looked into. Industrial warehousing, things like that are things I've looked into. I haven't bought anything like that yet. So, I mean, with those specific asset classes, what do you feel like the market impact is on what you're doing? I mean, where do you feel like the market's at right now with things? I mean, North Carolina is a different market than Phoenix. My mom actually lives on Topsail Beach there in North Carolina. I'm sure you know where that's at.
Yeah. So that's south of where I'm from. Yeah.
Yep. But beautiful place. And it's a different market than it is here in Phoenix. That's for sure. But there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Complete different animal resort rental market down there. You have a small year-round demographic. I live in Virginia, so I've got, some insulated markets. So there's DC. I do deals up in DC. You got the federal government. So it's insulated, but a very different than Arizona market. The thing about DC that's different than Arizona, you can go to Arizona and go into subdivisions where you've got 10,000 houses and they're all pretty much the same. Very easy to determine values and to do a flip. You know exactly what you got. When you're in the areas I'm in between DC, Charlottesville, Richmond, and Hampton Roads areas, most of the neighborhoods, every house is different. There aren't a whole lot of consistencies on a big scale. There might be a neighborhood of 1,000 homes that are about the same, but not thousands of them. So it's more difficult to comp. You can turn a corner one way or the other and values will change drastically in some of these markets. But we have the federal government in DC, we have the state government in Richmond, Charlottesville, we have the hospital and the university, UVA. And then Hampton Roads, you have the military. So they're very insulated markets and very different. The Outer Banks, the stuff I do down there is all coastal development stuff still. So it's all summer destination. I mean, those things are great. I mean, they're like apartment buildings. Some of those, they do $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 in rent. Some of those big houses, and a lot of people are doing really well in the Topsail Beach areas and down in Carolina Beach with Airbnb because you can buy property so cheap down there. You can do an Airbnb model and generate some really good income. That's not something I'm interested in, but a lot of people are, having a lot of fun and doing really well with Airbnb. But right now, I feel really good about suburban neighborhood strip centers, either developing new or buying existing. You just got to know what you're doing and be careful, but you can develop new on those things and get in and out in about an 18 to 24 month turn and generate about $1 million on a flip, or you can hold it and generate a couple $100,000 a year in cash flow. I really like those. I think those are going to sustain and be good for the long term. I think multifamily is great. Warehouse is great. I love industrial warehouses. I like to repurpose those and do industrial open space concepts where you might have a brewery, you might have a retail distribution person, you might have some artists, you might have a little bit of a industrial office area, but taking a big warehouse and repurposing it into a multi-tenant type of thing. You might have some of those in Arizona. There's not a lot of that around here.
There's a lot of that here. Yeah.
Sure. So that's a great concept, where you get a bunch of other small businesses that kind of share one big industrial building that's been sitting there vacant.
Well, I think that right now there's a prime opportunity in a lot of different areas or sub areas of real estate to make a lot of money. Obviously, lending is good right now. Money is pretty free flowing out there in the market right now, or at least it is here in Phoenix. There's a lot of opportunities that you can go after. Now, where do you see yourself being at 5 years from now? You've kind of transitioned to the bigger deals. You're doing some coaching and mentoring with people. Where does that go?
Same kind of thing. So I enjoy doing the bigger deals, fewer bigger deals that are interesting. I love to repurpose old buildings. So that's a lot of fun. I love to build ground up. I'm a developer, builder. That's just what I am and what I like to do. So I'm focusing more on that. And I love coaching people. I've done it my whole career. I've coached and mentored everybody in every business I've ever started and every business that I've ever been involved in, and including my own companies and my own deals now. So I really have a passion for that. And I'm really focusing the last year on growing and scaling that and really trying to help and work with more people and just kind of take the 22 years of experience that I have and the, hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars that I've spent on my education, both buying courses, going to seminars, and making mistakes, right? So it's not always what you know, it's what you know not to do that can be of the most value to somebody. And, so, I mean, that's what we're all about, right? We're all here to learn, get wisdom, experience, so we can pass it on to others. And, so I'm really passionate about that and I always have been. And I've had a lot of success finding really good operators and coaching them to the next level. So I look for great operators that are out there doing things and that just with a little bit of an awareness, a little bit of just knowing what they don't know and making them aware of what they don't know, they can just take their business to a whole new level. And, to me, that's what's fun. I do a lot of different things and I have, right? So I had somebody ask me the other day, what do I love doing? What do I love about what I do? And I said, for me, it's watching somebody realize their untapped potential, realizing their God-given talents and going out there and just fulfilling that and reaching their full potential that they didn't even know they had. That's what I love doing.
That's awesome. That is absolutely awesome. And you know what, Greg, for sake of time, you've shared a lot about your journey and kind of what you're diving into right now. You've been a very accomplished person in every aspect of real estate and real estate development. Sounds like that you're giving back by helping people out. But, I want to segue this into our lightning round. Are you ready for a lightning round?
I'm ready.
All right. Let me ask you this. If you could give our listeners one tip, one hashtag invest this tip to keep them moving forward, what would that be?
Well, it's like I said, if you've got something that's working for you, focus on that, scale it, automate it, and then use that to do bigger deals.
Great tip. Brent, thanks for sharing that. What's been a very impactful book for you that you read that had a massive impact on your life that you could share for our listeners?
Right. So other than the Bible, I have a strong faith. Rich Dad, Poor Dad was the first book that I read that opened my mind to what I just said. Create businesses that generate cash flow to invest in other assets.
Yep, absolutely. That's a several people that have been on the podcast have recommended that as being their book. Robert Kiyosaki was a great person for writing that book, putting that out there. I think it's literally changed probably millions of lives out there, mine included. So
I've read every one of his books, and that one, Empower Positive Thinking, is another great one. But yeah, the whole concept of start a business to generate cash flow to invest in other assets that provide income. That's what launched my career and why I did everything I did.
Absolutely. Now, who's giving you the best advice? You're a coach, you're a mentor now, but I'm sure you've had coaches and mentors. So who gave you some really, really good advice, and what was that?
Yeah, so, probably the best piece of advice I ever had in business was seek first to understand. Put yourself in the other person's shoes first. Look to serve, look to understand, look to, find out what you can do for somebody else. If you come from a point of helping other people get what they want, right? Zig Ziglar, you help enough other people get what they want, but not manipulative, but in a sincere way. Be genuinely interested in what it's going to take to help somebody else out first. Look to serve others first. Put yourself in other people's shoes. You never know what somebody's going through or they're dealing with. Seek first to understand. That's
absolutely huge. Thank you for sharing that, by the way. And how do you like to give back? Other than, your coaching and mentoring, what else do you do?
Yeah, so that's part of it. But yeah, I'm very, involved in the community and I do a lot of things with kids and youth and always have, and faith-based community events and things like that. So I get involved in a lot of different things from a nonprofit and a faith-based standpoint.
Awesome. That's great. And finally, Greg, how can the listeners reach you if they want to learn more? I mean, you've shared a lot. You're a wealth of knowledge for people. There's, we're going to include this in the show notes, but how do they reach you if they want to find out more about you and how they can get involved with you?
Yeah, so my website is gregdickerson.com. All my information is on there and all my other social media things and YouTube and everything. And I'm putting videos up on that all the time. And so it's gregdickerson.com. My number is 434-326-3903. I answer the phone. Like I said, I have no backlog in my life. I take care of everything right now, and I'm very efficient and organized. So reach out anytime, and I'm happy to help people. And that's kind of what the mission I'm on right now is, to help others in their careers and in their businesses and in their lives to fast track and fastball what I did that took me 22 years to do. I can help you do in a couple of years. So that's my mission in life right now.
Well, Greg, it's been great having you here today. I look forward to keeping in touch with you. Hopefully we can possibly do a deal. I'm actually looking at some stuff down in that North Carolina market right now, South Carolina actually specifically. So I might reach out to you for some of that wisdom that you have over those 22 years. But yeah, thanks again for being here. You shared a lot of information. I think it's going to be very valuable for the listeners out there, and we'll be in touch.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for having me. I enjoyed it, and we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, sounds great, man. Sounds great. We'll talk to you real soon. See ya.
Okay, Scott.